A millionaire single dad watched in stunned silence as a struggling waitress sat down and gently fed his disabled daughter, not knowing she was risking her job to show such kindness. But what happened next would change both their lives forever. It was a Tuesday evening at Rosie's diner, and Sarah Martinez was exhausted. At 26, she'd been working double shifts for 3 years, ever since her mother was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. The medical bills were crushing, and every penny mattered, which was why she couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how demanding Mrs. Patterson, the owner, could be. As she moved through the diner, Sarah noticed them. A well-dressed man in his early 40s with a young girl who appeared to be around 8 years old. The little girl sat in a specialized wheelchair, her movements limited, but her eyes bright and alert. Sarah watched as the man tried to help his daughter eat, his hands shaking slightly as he attempted to guide a spoonful of soup to her mouth. He was clearly struggling, and with each failed attempt, his frustration became more evident. "Come on, Emma," he whispered softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Just a little bit, sweetheart." Emma's condition made eating difficult for her. The soup kept spilling, and the man's shirt now bore several stains. Other customers were starting to stare, some with sympathy, others with discomfort. Sarah's heart went out to them both. When she heard Mrs. Patterson mutter, "Those people at table 4 are making a mess. It's disturbing other customers." Sarah's stomach dropped. She looked at the father and daughter again. The man had his head in his hands, clearly overwhelmed, while Emma made small sounds that might have been attempts at communication. Without thinking, Sarah walked over to their table. "Excuse me," she said gently, kneeling down to Emma's eye level. "Hi there, beautiful. I'm Sarah. Would it be okay if I helped you with your dinner?" The man looked up, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and embarrassment. "Oh no, you don't need to. I can handle it." "I know you can," Sarah said with a warm smile. "But sometimes it takes a village, right? I used to help feed my grandmother when she was sick. If you don't mind, I'd love to help Emma enjoy her meal." The man, Adrian, though Sarah didn't know his name yet, stared at her in amazement. In his world of corporate acquisitions, genuine kindness from strangers had become rare. He'd built his tech company from nothing and was now worth hundreds of millions. But all the money in the world couldn't make feeding his daughter any easier. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I mean, don't you have other customers?" Sarah glanced around. The diner was busy, but she'd caught up on most of her tables. More importantly, something in Emma's bright eyes told her this was exactly where she needed to be right now. "They can wait a few minutes," she said, though she knew Mrs. Patterson would be furious if she saw her sitting down during her shift. Sarah pulled up a chair and sat beside Emma's wheelchair. She picked up the spoon and dipped it gently into the tomato soup, making sure to get just the right amount, not too much that it would be difficult to swallow, but enough to be satisfying. "Okay, Emma, here comes the airplane," Sarah said playfully, making a soft whooshing sound as she guided the spoon toward Emma's mouth. "Can you help me out here?" "Open wide." To Adrian's amazement, Emma responded immediately. Her mouth opened, and she accepted the spoonful of soup without any of the resistance she'd been showing him. A small smile played at the corners of Emma's lips. "Good girl," Sarah praised warmly. "You're doing so great. Should we try another one?" For the next 15 minutes, Sarah patiently helped Emma eat her entire meal. She talked to Emma throughout, treating her not as someone to be pitied, but as any other child, asking about her favorite colors, telling silly jokes, and making funny faces that made Emma giggle. Adrian watched in wonder. His daughter, who often struggled through meals, was actually enjoying her dinner. More than that, she was responding to Sarah with an enthusiasm he rarely saw anymore. "She likes you," Adrian said softly, his voice full of emotion. "I like her too," Sarah replied, wiping Emma's mouth gently with a napkin. "She's got beautiful eyes, very expressive." Mrs. Patterson marched over, arms crossed. "Sarah, what do you think you're doing? Customers are waiting." Sarah's face burned. "I was just helping." "Helping? You're paid to serve food, not sit with customers. My office, after your shift." Sarah forced a smile at Emma. Emma reached toward her, and Adrian's chest ached at the sight. The threat in her voice was clear. Sarah's job was hanging by a thread, and they both knew it. "It's my fault," Adrian interjected, standing up. "I asked her to help. My daughter has special needs, and I don't care what the reason is," Mrs. Patterson snapped. "Sarah knows better than this." She turned back to Sarah. "Get back to work? Now." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She turned back to Emma and gently touched the little girl's hand. "It was so nice meeting you, Emma. You be good for your daddy, okay?" Emma made a small sound that might have been bye-bye and reached out toward Sarah with her limited mobility. The gesture nearly broke Adrian's heart. Sarah stood up and walked away, her shoulders set with resignation. She knew she was probably going to be fired, but in that moment, she couldn't bring herself to regret helping Emma. Some things were more important than job security, but what Sarah didn't know was who the man in the expensive suit really was. Adrian watched Sarah return to her other tables, maintaining her professional composure, even though he could see she was fighting back tears. He looked down at Emma, who was still looking in Sarah's direction with clear affection. "She was nice, wasn't she, sweetheart?" he whispered to his daughter. Emma made a happy sound and clapped her hands together, something she only did when she was truly delighted. He built Dataflow Technologies into a multi-billion-dollar company. Success brought doctors and specialists, but not laughter at dinner or patience at mealtimes. Money could buy care, but not what Sarah showed Emma that night. Kindness without pity, love without conditions. He'd become successful beyond his wildest dreams. His company had made him worth over $400 million. He could afford the best medical care, the top specialists, the most exclusive schools, but money couldn't buy what he'd just witnessed: pure, selfless kindness. Most people who interacted with Emma treated her with either pity or discomfort. Even the expensive caregivers he hired maintained a professional distance. But Sarah had treated Emma like any other child, with respect, joy, and genuine affection. And she'd risked her job to do it. Adrian helped Emma into her coat and gathered their things. As he approached the counter to pay, he overheard Mrs. Patterson talking to another employee. "I'm going to have to let Sarah go," she was saying. "This isn't the first time she's been overly involved with customers. We run a business here, not a charity." Adrian's jaw tightened. He paid his bill and left a $50 tip, not unusual for someone of his means, but generous enough to be noticed. As they left the diner, he made a mental note of the address. He had some research to do. After her shift, Sarah sat across from Mrs. Patterson's desk. "Sarah, I can't run a business if my staff crosses lines with customers," Mrs. Patterson said. Sarah lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, but the girl needed help." "Sarah, I'm disappointed," Mrs. Patterson began. "You know how important it is to maintain professional boundaries with customers." I know, and I'm sorry, Sarah said quietly. But, Sarah, I like you, Mrs. Patterson interrupted. You're a hard worker, and customers generally like you. But this business survives on efficiency and professionalism. We can't have employees sitting down with customers, no matter how sympathetic the situation might be. Sarah nodded, accepting her fate. I understand. I'll clean out my locker. Now hold on, Mrs. Patterson said, raising a hand. I didn't say I was firing you, but this is your final warning. One more incident like this, and you're gone. Understood? Sarah nodded quickly, relief flooding through her. Yes, ma'am. It won't happen again. But even as she said it, Sarah knew she was lying. If she saw another child in need, another person struggling, she'd make the same choice again. It was simply who she was. What she didn't know was that her kindness had already set something much bigger in motion. 3 days later, Sarah was working the evening shift when an elegant woman in her 50s entered the diner. She sat in Sarah's section, and when Sarah approached, the woman smiled warmly. You must be Sarah, she said. Sarah paused, surprised. Yes, I am. Do we know each other? Not exactly, but I've heard wonderful things about you. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm here on behalf of someone who would like to remain anonymous. They've asked me to give you this. Helen handed Sarah a sealed envelope. Sarah stared at it, confused. I'm sorry, I don't understand. What is this? Open it, Helen said gently. But perhaps you should sit down first. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written on expensive stationery, along with what appeared to be a check. She read the letter first. Dear Sarah, your kindness reminded me that there is still good in the world. You risked your job to show compassion to my daughter. Please accept this as a token of gratitude. A grateful father. Sarah's vision blurred with tears. Whoever he was, he had seen her, valued her. For once, the world had noticed her kindness. Sarah looked at the check and gasped. It was made out for $50,000. There has to be some mistake, she whispered, her voice shaking. This is too much. I can't accept this. Helen smiled knowingly. There's no mistake, dear. And there's more. Sarah looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. More? The gentleman who sent me was quite impressed with your character. He owns a company called Dataflow Technologies, and they're looking for someone to head their new corporate philanthropy department. Someone who understands what it means to help others, who has genuine empathy and compassion. Sarah's heart was racing. She'd heard of Dataflow Technologies. Everyone had. They were one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country. The position comes with a starting salary of $80,000 a year, full health benefits, and a signing bonus that would allow you to move your mother to the best care facility in the state, Helen continued. All he asks is that you bring the same heart you showed his daughter Emma to this new role. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as the magnitude of what was happening began to sink in. The stranger she'd helped, the father struggling to feed his disabled daughter, had been the billionaire CEO of Dataflow Technologies. Why? Sarah managed to ask through her tears. Why would he do this? Helen reached across the table and gently took Sarah's hand. Because kindness recognizes kindness, dear, and because his daughter hasn't stopped asking about Sarah the nice lady since she met you. He wants Emma to grow up in a world where people like you are valued and rewarded for their goodness. As Sarah folded the letter back into the envelope, Helen spoke softly. The gentleman asked if you might join him for dinner tonight. Bella's Italian Bistro on 5th Street at 7. He'll be waiting. Sarah blinked. Dinner? With who? But Helen only gave her a knowing smile and walked away, leaving Sarah with more questions than answers. That evening, Sarah walked into Bella's Italian Bistro, smoothing her thrift store dress with nervous hands. The warm smell of garlic and baked bread filled the air as she scanned the tables. Then her breath caught. A man rose from his chair, a little awkwardly at first, then with quiet confidence. It was him, the father from the diner, the man whose daughter she had fed when no one else would. Sarah, he said warmly, extending his hand. Adrian Lee. Her heart skipped. Adrian Lee, the billionaire CEO of Dataflow Technologies, the stranger she had once served soup to, now standing before her with gratitude shining in his eyes. Please, call me Adrian, he said gently, and thank you for what you did for Emma. Sarah's eyes misted as she spotted Emma in her wheelchair beside the table, grinning the moment she saw her. Sarah, the little girl cried, her voice bright with joy. Adrian gestured to the empty seat. Please, join us. Emma hasn't stopped asking about you and insisted this dinner wouldn't be complete without you. Over dinner, Adrian shared more about his life and Emma's condition. He spoke openly about the challenges of single parenthood and his constant worry about Emma's future. I can give her the best medical care, the best therapists, the best everything money can buy, he said, watching Emma enjoy her pancakes with Sarah's help. But I can't give her what you gave her the other night. Someone who sees her not as a disability or a burden, but just as Emma. That's because she's not a disability or a burden, Sarah replied, wiping chocolate from Emma's chin. She's a joy. Look at that smile. How could anyone not fall in love with that smile? As if she understood, Emma beamed at Sarah, chocolate chips stuck between her teeth. The job offer is real, Adrian said, seriously. I've been wanting to expand our corporate giving for years, but I needed the right person to lead it. Someone who understands what real need looks like, who has genuine compassion. Would you consider it? Sarah looked down at Emma, who was now holding Sarah's hand with both of hers, and then back at Adrian. She saw the hope in his eyes, not just for his company, but for his daughter to have someone special in her life. I'd be honored, she said softly. Adrian didn't just hand Sarah a salary, he gave her training. She spent evenings learning spreadsheets, shadowing managers, and asking endless questions. 1 year later, her persistence paid off. Sarah wasn't just earning more. She was coordinating Adrian's philanthropic outreach, using her own struggles to shape programs that actually helped people like her. Sarah stood in the conference room of Dataflow Technologies, presenting their quarterly charitable report. Under her leadership, the company had donated over $2 million to various causes, including funds for families caring for disabled children. But the numbers weren't what made Sarah happiest about her new role. What made her happiest was the relationship that had grown between her, Adrian, and Emma. Sarah had become a regular fixture in their lives, joining them for dinners, weekend outings, and Emma's appointments. She'd learned Emma's unique way of communicating and celebrated every small milestone. Adrian had found something he'd never expected, someone who loved Emma as much as he did. And Emma had found her voice. At the zoo 3 weeks later, Emma looked up at Sarah and whispered, Sarah, love you. Adrian froze. Tears filled his eyes. Sarah laughed and cried as Emma giggled proudly. For Adrian, no victory meant more. For Sarah, it proved patience, and love could do what money never could. It was only 3 words, but they were the first words she'd ever spoken clearly. Adrian had cried. Sarah had cried. Even Emma seemed to understand the magnitude of what had happened. Now, as Sarah finished her presentation, she looked out the window and smiled. Tomorrow was Saturday, and she was taking Emma to see a children's theater production. Adrian would be there too. He'd been making a point of working less and spending more time with Emma. Their little family, unconventional as it was, had become the most important thing in all of their lives. As she walked back to her office, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Emma wants pizza for dinner tonight. She also wants to know if you can teach her to paint her nails. Are you free to join us? Sarah laughed and typed back, "Pink nail polish sounds perfectly reasonable. I'll bring the glitter kind." The response came immediately. "You're both going to be the death of me. See you at 6. Emma says she loves you." "Tell her I love her too," Sarah replied. "And Adrian, thank you for everything." "Thank you, Sarah. You saved us both." As Sarah looked around her beautiful office, she realized Adrian was wrong about one thing. She hadn't saved them. They'd saved each other. Even the smallest acts of kindness can create the biggest miracles. And sometimes, when you open your heart to help others, you end up finding exactly what you didn't know you were looking for. A single moment of compassion can change everything for everyone involved. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more soulful stories, where kindness always finds its way home.